And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Friday morning's flying weather showing IFR in a band here along the front, weakening as it pushes eastward here along the Aleutian chain, and then some more IFR with the main low center back towards Chimiana 2. Marginal VFR for much of the Bering Sea becoming VFR here along the southwest coast up across St. Lawrence Island and on up into the Chukchi Sea and along and just south of the Brooks Range. Some marginal VFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Areas of IFR here over the eastern interior and back down in toward Nenana, down toward Haisley possibly, and another zone here over the southwest mountains. Otherwise, south central Alaska Copper River Basin down to Prince William Sound here, good VFR. And marginal VFR, some areas of IFR over the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, IFR in northern and eastern panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR. And VFR here spreading into the Gulf of Alaska, extending northward there to the Alaska Range, then some marginal VFR along and north and west of the mountains there. Back to VFR here along the west coast, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, northern Bering Sea, marginal VFR for the central eastern North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast. And mostly VFR over the northern Bering Sea here, mostly marginal VFR for the Aleutians of the Bering Sea, and with that weakening front, just a narrow band of IFR here down across the eastern Aleutians. And that disappears for Saturday morning. Marginal VFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, right on up to the Aleutian Range. And some marginal VFR over the southwest interior, surrounded by VFR for south central Alaska. Northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Yukon River there, right on up into the Brooks Range, IFR for the North Slope, and some marginal VFR mainly on the eastern Arctic coast. Lower conditions here, Tanana Valley and from Yukon Flats right on down into the North Gulf Coast with areas of IFR there. No change for the Panhandle. And for Saturday afternoon, finally some VFR showing up here over the central and southern southeast coast. IFR holding in the north along the coast range here up into the southern Copper River Basin. Also possible IFR here along and just north of the central Alaska Range, maybe up around Chokyitzek, Fort Yukon, and pretty good over the remainder of the interior Alaska here. And the Bering Sea northern areas, stays VFR. Marginal for the Pribilof Islands to the eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR for the Alaska Peninsula, and IFR here for the central and west central Aleutians for passes. And the Tupikanatigan, optimistically going VFR tomorrow, possible marginal VFR on the northern approaches or to the north there, and Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy, VFR, windy, looks to be VFR, and mostly VFR for Isabel. Mentasta, occasional marginal VFR, but back to VFR for Tanita and VFR for Portage, Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here back south of the Alaska Peninsula and right across the eastern Aleutians here to south of the Pribilof Islands and off the North Gulf Coast, 2,000 feet up across Prince of Wales Island and 2,000 feet south of the Aleutian chain. And with that storm coming in, the slowly weakening low center pushing some considerable moderate rime icing along and just north of the west central Aleutians, pushing over toward Adak, and then the icing band associated with the front itself, again weakening, and that'll push some considerable moderate rime icing into the eastern Aleutians, not quite making it to the Pribilof Islands. Otherwise, the other significant area would be here over the southeast coast from Yakutat on down and toward the southern Panhandle. And the jet stream here at 33,000 feet showing trough of low pressure over much of mainland Alaska here extending down, and that keeping the jet here to the east and south of the Panhandle. And for the out west here, upper level low there over the eastern Aleutians, and we got west-northwest winds about 140 to 145 knots along and just south of the Aleutian chain there, and then weaker northwest winds at 65 knots coming across the northern Bering Sea, starting to pick up as they cross the Alaska Peninsula to about 75 knots. 9,000 feet, pretty light winds here for the Gulf of Alaska, all of mainland Alaska and the central and eastern Bering Sea. Stronger winds with that low center there over the far western Aleutians, but the strongest winds will be south of the Aleutians there. And we've got this low coming up into the eastern Gulf of Alaska, or just off the coast of the Panhandle. So south winds 40 to 65 knots there. And at 3,000 feet, 60-knot winds from the south-southwest blowing right into the northern Panhandle. Lighter over the interior. Northeast 40 knots, though, from the northwest coast across the Seward Peninsula and across St. Lawrence Island. And then much windier conditions here at 3,000 feet over the western Bering Sea. Turbulence-wise, with that still strong low center out there, considerable moderate turbulence shimmying at 2 eastward to about at Adak Island. And light to isolated moderate chop, Atka Island into the eastern Aleutians. And it could be a little bumpy here, St. Lawrence Island across the Seward Peninsula to the northwest coast. And moderate turbulence there for the southeast coast.